This story tells about a game played by 1 billion people. There was a mistake, an invincible boss, and a terrifying plot to destroy humanity. The question was what kind of connections they had. Our main Grey Lowly threw up his vomit with an annual salary of 10 million. He left the world's largest gaming company only to find his missing brother in the game. But the game was completely different. His character dies, and immediately a lot of system errors occur. Thus, our main character falls into it, and becomes a small weak skeleton. Now he had to survive in a bunch of bosses, or as we can call them, terrifying monsters. All he did was run and hide, and the other players were hunting him the whole time. In addition, everything went awry, because our hero decided to become an Asura. Asura would be a pitiful and powerful man, and he would kill every enemy that got in his way. Heavy rains have created giant forests. The rich forest and fruits were the main source of income for the surrounding village. But in the depths of the forest, huge black shadows could often be seen. In the midst of all this, the young man encountered a huge monster. This monster treated him like a bug, but this man was not at all afraid of him, even though he was exhausted. He was ready to bet everything on his last move. It was a duel between King Luzhen and a one-armed riot police. Oman raises his hand to hit him, and it was the boss' decisive move. His sword shakes the ground, but King Luzhen dodges the blow, increasing his speed by 5 seconds and very quickly cuts his neck. He jumps to avoid the attack, barely managing to get hit by the boss, and uses the smoke to get closer, and then spoil the combo skill Sonic Step and Cross Blade Strike. He considered himself a genius. He successfully defeated the elite boss, the one-armed riot police. Oman disappears, and he gets his heavy sword. Almost all of the stats were good, except for the attack speed. In fact, he had an advanced attribute that reduces the requirements to 5 levels. King Lin thought he was very lucky to get such a weapon on the first day of the server launch. With his help, he could now rise 1 level in the ranking of combat abilities. His assistant Fairy congratulates him on receiving a powerful weapon. Then, she informs him that a time-limited event has been activated and asks if he wants to take part in it. The purpose of the event was to defeat the boss of the Blood Moon Walker, who appeared in the giant forest to gain rare intercourse and a huge amount of experience. The duration of the event was half an hour. King Luzhen grins, because that was exactly what he wanted. He wanted to test his new sword, and now was the right time to do so. The system tells him that it senses a large number of players who are heading to the boss, and he needed to hurry up. Otherwise, other players may defeat him before him. He started to have a headache from all these trees around, and then a purple light fell on the middle of the forest. The King of Lies wonders if this is really a purple class item. He could sell it for as much as 1,000 gold coins. He's racing very fast in that direction, and when he gets there, he sees so many weapons scattered on the ground. He was delighted to see all this, and he wondered how much money he could earn from it, but he had no idea that Luli was sitting on a branch right behind him. Luli cuts his throat very quickly, and the King of Lies was shocked that he was killed so easily. His body was gradually disappearing, and with that, Luli received a heavy sword. He was a rare limited-time boss, a Blood Moon Walker. And this was his 418th murder. Then all the other participants also saw it. They were also attracted by this weapon. They all rushed at him to kill him. There were 4 hours left before the end of the limited-time event. Luli was also ready with his sword, and one by one, just chopped them all down. No matter how big they were, Luli's speed was second to none. The girl suggests that they all surround him and attack together. Then, everyone surrounds him and attacks together. Archers and mages attack from afar, but the rat is shorter to restrain his movement. Tanks and wars use force in turn to counter the damage. They were confident that with their numbers they could defeat him. Their rules were to kill the boss, and when the equipment fell, whoever grabbed it would keep it for themselves. But it wasn't as they thought. Luli kills them all in an instant, and the survivor realizes that this was not the boss they could have defeated. But no matter what excuses they made, Luli spares no one. But killing wasn't enough for him anyway. His assistant Fairy tells him not to despair, as he is waiting for a huge amount of experience and rare equipment. So, what's there about the background of our main character? 3 days before all this, he was the director of research and development of a gaming company. He was a top data analyst and had a master's degree in computer science. But his boss was disappointed in him. He told him that with his abilities, he could get the company's share capital and become a shareholder. But he is still investigating the missing case, which could lead to damage to the interests and reputation of the company. The board of directors decided to fire him on their own, and Luli happily agrees to his dismissal. Even his boss felt sorry for him for making such a decision, after being so talented. He told his secretary to find someone to take his place. He was ready to add even more to the already impressive salary. But she wasn't really listening to him. She chose her position only to see Luli every day. And now, after his dismissal, she had no interest in doing her job either. And now the boss's voice just annoyed her. But Luli was determined to find his brother, because now he has some evidence concerning his case. He was such a workaholic that in 2 years he was at home only once, so he doesn't even know where his house is. And in another scene, we see Af and Asia quarreling. And no matter how hard Afi tried to explain his relationship with other girls, Asia didn't even listen to him, and she was ready to break up with him. And so she left trying. And Faye couldn't even stop her, and fell to his knees, and then he saw Luli, his second brother. Loli asks him if he accidentally came at the wrong time, and Afe tells him that he always comes at the right time. Luli asks him what happened to his girlfriend, and Faye tells him that the problem will be solved automatically in 2 days. And Faye asks him if he wants something to drink. Luli picks up a bra that was lying on his couch, and scolds him for behaving so unhygienic. He asks him to be restrained from his personal life, and Yu jokingly tells him that he knows everything, and throws the bra in another place. He tells him that this time he will have to be with them for a few more days, and Face asks him if Len will join him, and eat shish kebab with him in the evening. He tells him that now that he is so tired, he should also take him to a massage center. And finally, Lee tells him that he has found new evidence in the case of his older brother. As soon as he hears this, Afe's expression changes. In a very serious tone, he informs Luli that the device he asked for is already ready. They plan to launch the official server of their fantasy moon at midnight. Loli knew that the reason their older brother disappeared was because of the game. It's finally midnight. He and his brother have already prepared their special costumes. When they put them on, the system appears and asks them if they want to enter the game. They click on the confirm button, and the system instantly invites people to a fantastically lunar world. And finally, Luli's assistant named Fairy tells him that the real game is about to begin. Fairy assistant wishes him a happy journey in virtual reality. The data started loading. His sensorineural abilities, vision correction and progress in this direction are improving. After the data was successfully uploaded, he proceeded to create the character. Then he enters the village of novice adventurers. His stats were very low, and it all seemed very real. And then, Afi introduced him to a new girl, Amy, and he asks Luli if he wants to go with them to the Messiah, because all the tasks for beginners were the same. Luli smiled and told him that they were going different routes, so he advised him to go up to the first level. But Face didn't understand at all what Luli was talking about. Then, Luli told his assistant to open a special window with the repayment code. Fairy's assistant opens a special window with a redemption code. Loli enters her code and checks her email. He had 3 unread letters. The fairy assistant tells Luli that she can't recognize these objects at all. He answers her that these were the same fraudulent actions that he committed. The assistant tells him to stop the fraud immediately, otherwise his account may be blocked forever. He tells her that he will be fine, as he has hidden them in the base code of the game, where the system will not be able to detect them, even if they try to find them manually, and even that will take them 6 months. And it was simply impossible to forbid him. The first greeting was the Omniscience Bracelet. This required the 10th level. His hidden attribute was that every time the quality of the equipment improved, he could get a specialized skill of a random profession. He asks the fairy assistant to help him hide the equipment, and the fairy assistant was simply hypnotized by the beauty of the bracelet. He replied that he needed to keep a low profile, and the next item was a volume of random achievements. And depending on the events that happen to the hero, every 10 levels generates a random achievement mission, and receives a random reward upon completion. And it was a really interesting subject. The last item was the invitation of the infernal Asura. This was the most important point of all. He worked for Destiny's company to get it. He assumed that this was the reason for the disappearance of his older brother. The invitation was very threatening and frightening. The system asks him if he wants to change his profession. Luli answers yes without any hesitation, and his heart starts to beat faster. And now he was in pain. He sees an illusion of 4 skeletons surrounding him, where the skeletons utter a few phrases in Sanskrit, and then they all stab Loli to death. He had no idea what such a dangerous plot was up to, and the pain was too real, and now his character was dead. The system tries to reboot, but fails several times, and he falls into a completely different realm. Luli was just falling down as low as he could. He ordered the system to exit the game, but it was useless. Luli just fell endlessly. It was so dark that he was ready for anything. He couldn't get out of the game. He was unable to exit the game while working. He fell to the ground, and by this time had already turned into skeletons. Luli was a small and weak skeleton. He wondered why he turned into a skeleton. After all, he shouldn't be a skeleton. The main character wonders if he should become an Asura instead. He looks around and sees the cemetery. There was a man reciting a spell. His summoning was successful. He was a heroic undead summoner player who was at level 30. His skills were the infernal chain, corroding fire, and summoning the undead. Luli thought he was an NPC. He tried to talk to him, but Yin was shocked to see that his skeleton could speak, and he wondered if he had summoned a very rare skeleton. Loli, seeing that he didn't talk to him, because he considers him a novice NPC and moves on. Yin wondered why he hadn't knelt down in front of him yet. He has got it into his head that servants need to be whipped to make them obedient, otherwise he will behave arrogantly. He recites a spell, and the souls of zeros with his magic chains. He tells him that now he will teach him how to become an obedient dog. King Yi touches him with an ominous green light in his hand, and Luli tells him to stop, since he was only at the first level, and did not have any skills yet. And then suddenly everything shakes, and the earth shatters, throwing Luli like a toothpick. He was shocked to see that a huge monster was walking in front of his eyes. He wondered if he was on the wrong card or something. Now he's completely confused. He didn't even have the opportunity to play, and then finally, his assistant fairy appeared and appreciated his cool outfit. He asks her where he is. She tells him that he was in the land of pure darkness, where all the high-level bosses were born. He asks her if it is possible to continue playing this game at all, and the fairy assistant checks a few things, and then finds out that there is a Messiah fulfillment point 100 kilometers away from them, and she asks him to go there with her. He asks her if there is any other shortcut, but she replies that it was the shortest one she could find. Along the way, they encounter numerous monsters, but, fortunately, Luli safely escaped the danger. He also received a message from a foe. He told him about what he had achieved. He was at the 5th level, and he couldn't believe that Luli was still at the 1st level. Luli texted him that he was busy and would talk to him later. And indeed, he was very busy running away from huge monsters. But in the end, after all this, they arrived at their first destination. They still had a long way to go, and it usually took them 2 hours to reach their local destination along this route. There was another entrance, but there was no one there. The fairy assistant told him that this is not the route that was planned, but Luli does not listen to her, and goes in that direction. There were 2 giant security guards standing there. Luli tells them that he has an urgent matter, so they have to let him in. And one of them tells him that it's okay to have urgent business, so he has to quickly enter, and makes way for him. Luli was glad that it turned out to be so easy, but then he realized that they were just joking. They didn't tell him that he was going to his own cemetery. They laugh and plan to go see how he dies there. And now the registration period in the Fenin arena has come to an end. Luli enters the arena, and there was a rabbit who commented on what was happening, and the huge crowd was thrilled to see Luli enter the arena. But then they were shocked to find out that he was only at the 1st level. Now they all started bullying him. All the other participants were very confident that they would destroy it in the shortest possible time. The commentator then told everyone to calm down, as the Fenin battle was about to begin. And so Rabbit and his fellow commentator Turtle have a night battle, but first they announce the rules of the game. The screen displays all the rules that relate to the battle. The winner will receive 5,000 experience points and epic-class weapons. And then they announced that this was the lowest level battle recorded in the history of the Fenin battle arena. Luli is now caught between monsters that were just waiting to destroy him. He realizes that he made a mistake by not listening to his fairy assistant. And then, to make the battle fair, they raise everyone to the 10th level. And now Luli temporarily reaches the 10th level and can now choose his weapon. There were many professions such as archer, swordsman, assassin, and so on. Luli wondered what profession he should choose. And when he played games with his brothers, they always said that he was perfect for the role of a killer. And so, he chooses the role of the killer himself. His stats improve a bit, and he also gets his temporary sharp daggers. He decides to fight, but if he can't fight, then he should give up. Then, the rabbit announces the most important thing. Those who perform exceptionally well will have a chance to receive their guidance. The man on the left, the famous Master Joan Y. Half of Blood Moon City's combat capabilities were under his control. Whoever gets his attention will make a huge difference. The crowd was crazy about him. Most of them were fans, and the rest were just fans. And on the right side, the beauty of the Blood Moon City, Master Wu Yu, was depicted. She was the master of the East Hall of Blood Moon City. She was responsible for spreading information in Blood Moon City and the Blood Pool Dungeon. The commentator also felt over her, and she was very strict in selecting her students. She only had one student, and it was shocking, but at the same time true. Her one and only disciple was a peerless genius who had won 10 consecutive victories in the Fenin arena and destroyed Blood Moon City, and it was none other than Han and Zhou. There were rumors in the hall about her bad character, and if she doesn't like someone, she kills that person, and if someone looks at her the wrong way, they will be fed to dogs. And meanwhile, something else was going on in Luli's head. Her only disciple, Han Yi Zhao, was his older brother. He was very happy to find a clue to his identity. And now his motivation is clear. He needed to get closer to View and get more information about him. In Yu, she began to get angry because Luli was openly staring at her. At first, she thinks about how to develop him to death, but then realizing that in the end, he will die when the battle begins. And that's when the real battle finally begins. Rabbit commented on every fight. The first match was won by Blood Claw from the Bloodline clan. He was the most popular participant in this arena. The second winner was Bei Lei from the Gang of Great Balls. His sword was fast, accurate, and ruthless. The third battle was won by a double-bladed demon. His fighting abilities were also extraordinary. And the fourth winner was none other than our Loli. He defeated his opponent so quickly that no one even had time to notice it. The enemy was defeated, and everyone was shocked. And that means it's time for the quarterfinals. The first match took place between Luli and Gur. Gur tells him to give up, as he doesn't like killing weaklings. He says he didn't even have the qualifications to fight him. Meanwhile, on the other side, Ah-Fei was destroying all the goblins, along with his two assistants. He did it effortlessly, and Ah-Fei believed that his brother Loli was even more amazing and talented. He wonders what Luli is currently doing. Luli wasn't ready to give up on Hira at all. Hare tells him that he still does not understand what situation he is in. He tells Luli that since he is very generous, he will kill him as soon as possible, so that he does not feel pain. In this way, Hare received his constant sharp burst of fire, and it was very fast. Loli successfully evades them all. Igor believes that he was just lucky, and then, again and again, Loli evades every attack of the gear. No one knew how he did it. In fact, Luli was calculating his moves with the help of his sharp mind. The solution was to keep a distance of 2 meters. He was also guessing his next steps. The crowd was laughing at Gur, and it pissed him off, and he decides to cut Luli in half for everyone in the next step. But as Luli predicted, he uses a slash stroke, and this time, Luli also makes his move and cuts the gear in half. And no one could believe their eyes that Luli would defeat Gur. He was like a dark horse throughout the tournament, and they were all looking forward to his performance in the final. And even Joanna finds it very interesting. However, Wu Yu wasn't like that, but since he didn't let her get bored, she granted him a little extra life. Joan also believed that a low-ranking representative like him would not be very useful in the future, and, even though the last match was unexpected, the next match became a championship battle. It was between the lion Blood Claw and Bei Lei. The battle begins, and the bloody cocoon mocks the Bei. Bei tells him that although he gives him the bed, he can still defeat him as long as he has a sword with him. Thus, at the speed of light, he strikes the Blood Claw. And it was at least 5 times faster than Gears. He almost took off the head of this lion, but then to his horror, the bloody claw bit the sword, and broke it with the force of his bite, and then with a double blow of his claws, he finished off the Bei. This lion was disappointed with his performance, and he was waiting for a better fight. Everyone thought that he would definitely become a champion, and the whole crowd was rooting for him. But Wu Yu was not satisfied with his performance. Loli was analyzing the previous fight. He realized that even after the lion's level was lowered to 10, its basic characteristics far exceeded the average value. This lion looks at Luli and tells him to fight him, since he hasn't had enough fun yet. He looked at him as an ordinary knuckle, but this provocation of his did not affect Luli in any way, since he was smart. And if his previous analysis is correct, then he is no more equal to him. But the only way to get close to Wu Yu is to win this competition. So, even if he knows that he is at a disadvantage, and the commentator tries to dissuade him from losing the match, he is not going to be created after he encounters difficulties, because he won't find his big brother if he's such a coward. His brothers are the only relatives he has left in this world, so they are more important to him than his life. Therefore, no matter what difficulties he faces, he will not stop. And from that moment, the final match began, and therefore the lion was more than happy to offend the little skeleton, as he expected from a low-ranking creature. But now when he stands face to face with him, he proudly declares that he will be treated to a small skeleton as a dessert to celebrate his victory. And he plans to make his opponent show his despair and regret in order to please him to the end. However, his threats did not amuse Luli at all, as he just looks at him as dead meat. So he jumped towards the lion, and the lion noticed that his speed was even slower than that of the swordsman. And before that, he actually moved so slowly that he just decided to use one hand to stop him. But to his surprise, the little skeleton dodged the blow quite easily, and was now behind him. He's still dodging it, but now he's been reminded that this little skeleton was a killer. And it looks like he was just pretending to catch this lion cub off guard. But it doesn't really matter, because in his eyes, he is still worthless garbage. So he uses his side to counterattack, but the little skeleton also dodged this blow. At these words, the lion did not smile anymore, as he realized that he was fighting a flea that was just planning to return from his attack. And what surprised him even more was that now he got a cut from someone he thought was garbage, although he didn't even know how he managed to do it. So he took it as an insult, an unforgivable act, because he is a blood claw, a noble leader of the younger generation of blood. So it is an insult to be wounded by the lower scum. And with this outcome, he was even more angry than ever. Therefore, he activated his blood warrior skill, which increases strength and critical strike by 20% for 15 seconds, in order to kill his opponent in the most humiliating way possible. But the fact that Blood Kyuga uses skills made everyone assume that cannon fodder is actually on the same level as Blood Claw. And even Wu Yu was now intrigued by what this little skeleton would show her next, as it was strange to see a monster with a low level and a bloodline of the lowest rank capable of delivering such a blow. Then the lion began his attack, jumping to the skeleton, and unleashed a barrage of attacks on him. And even though the skeleton manages to block him, he knows that he can't hold this position for long, since every blow of the lion was heavy as a truck, and as he expected, he lost his balance, and his defense was broken. And so the bloody cog took this opportunity to wipe this bastard off the face of the earth, and then insulted him, telling him to stay where he belongs. But to his surprise, as soon as he got closer, the little skeleton revealed to him that it was all just a game, and that he was just waiting for him to use his special technique. Because, even though his killing move is very powerful, but for half a second, he can't immediately turn around. So little Sklet used his chance to activate his ability to stab in the back, teleport behind the enemy's back, and launch a surprise attack. However, his plan could have worked with another participant, but not with Blood Claw, since he has a skill that doesn't require him to turn around. Therefore, he uses his Lion Roar skill, and with it, all enemies within a radius of 5 meters will be forcibly neutralized for a minute and a half, which surprised everyone and even June. So now he decided to take this lion under his wing, while Hao-Yu, on the other hand, felt that it was such a waste of time since she finally got interested in the participants for a long time. But she couldn't do anything if the little skeleton couldn't survive it, because for problems with skills. And as I expected from Blood Claw, he managed to cut Cannon Fodder's arm, and when he moves away, his bones show a lack of calcium, and they break, and so he also lost his other legs. And in this scenario, to be honest, they are more than confident that the winner has already been determined, and the only thing left to see is whether the Cannon Fodder will surrender or directly die in the arena. However, Blood Claw is not going to leave the little skeleton alive, as he laughs at him, seeing his pitiful state, while the little skeleton, on the other hand, was more than happy to see that everything looks good, because it seems that the fish is about to bite the hook. With this, the lion tried to figure out how to humiliate the skeleton, for example, to break his bones one by one, or to play with his head, as with a sword, while Luli just sits with a threatening look, and waits for his opponent to take 3 more steps in his direction. And with that, The bloody rag stepped on the little skeleton's foot to provoke him even more, but he had no idea that this was exactly what he had been waiting for all this time. And so he took a step forward and threw his dagger right in front of Blood Claw, who assumed it was just a pathetic attempt at fighting, so he just blocked it without much thought. But he didn't realize that the little skeleton was still controlling his other arm, so he manages to throw the dagger, so he can use it while he activates his backstabbing skill. And with this combination, he seriously wounded the proud lion with one blow. This immediately took everyone by surprise. Because of how shocking it was, everyone fell silent, as they couldn't understand what had just happened. Fortunately for them, they still have one more comment that can break the silence, and since he was interrupted all the time, he took this opportunity to shine his perfect voice to match the fight he had just witnessed. And it's been a hell of a long time since he's seen such an exciting comeback. Just like the rampaging turtle, he took it as a mission to shed light on what happened, and that it was all part of the cannon fodder plan. From the beginning, he demonstrated his speed advantage for the first time, and attacked the strongest while being weak. Then, he provoked this lion, making him angry, and when the bloody cut became serious, he deliberately pretended to be weak, luring the lion to use his last move. But the most amazing thing is that although everyone thought that Bloody Cut was the one who cut off his arm and leg, it turned out that in fact, it was Cannon Fodder himself who did it. In the end, when they all realized that Cannon Fodder was doomed, he used the skeleton return skill, which allows him to maintain a spiritual connection with the fallen skeleton bone for a certain period of time, and he achieved his final comeback by defeating a stronger opponent despite being weaker. Thus, the cannon fodder had a new name, January U, and in the common people, it means the killer of the moon. And now he planned to put this lion on his fang to prevent future problems. Even if Blood Claws has already declared that he is giving up, however, this plan of his was not in favor of Joan, as he was thinking about taking this lion under his wing. And so, he stopped Kang Yu's advance by knocking him back and using his skills to wipe him off the face of the earth. But Kang Yu was powerless to repel such an attack. Fortunately, his wit attracted interest in her, and so she also intervened to save his ass and used the sky-piercing explosion to get revenge on the bastard who did this to her precious skeleton. Yes, there is also such a stunning demonstration of strength. Even Joan was damaged by this, and now, gaping, demands a reasonable explanation for why she did it. But she doesn't feel the need to explain herself to him, since she just ignored him, and saved the skeleton that interested her, and said that from now on you belong to me. In UU, I finally finished restoring our Skeletron to its original appearance, and he came to the conclusion that now everything should return to normal. This amazed Loli, because his broken bones not only healed, but also became stronger than ever before. But your train of thought was disrupted by the fact that he launched another attack. She tries to threaten the bastard rabbit and the turtle that if the results are not announced soon, she will also kill them. And since they don't want to be donut-shaped creatures, they obeyed immediately after she finished her threat, and announced to everyone the appearance of a new star, January U. This arena champion Fenon is a moon slayer. The system honored his rewards, and gave him 5,000 experience points, raising him to the 15th level. And he also received a new passive ability called Shadow Step, which constantly increases his agility by 20%. With this increase, its quality has also increased significantly. Then he received another reward, an epic weapon, that increases his level in the class. It was a blood-stained blade with a special ability to transform 10% of the damage done to the recovery itself. That is from the hill. Even the commentators were surprised to see such a weapon, because the presence of a vampire attribute is really impressive, as it is ideal for long battles, and endurance is crucial in the game. When everything was settled, Woe and I wasted no time immediately getting down to business and informed my pet that now they were initiating a strain cloud disaster, which Loli had no idea about, since he was new to all this. He asked me to explain what it was, and the rabbit understood everything. Rabbit explains that the storm cloud platforms are divided into two parts. The first part is an arena battle, during which champions are chosen, and the second part is part of the storm cloud disaster, which will happen immediately after forcing the storm cloud champion to descend into the player's world as a boss with limited time. The time limit is 1 hour, and the boss will be tasked with ensuring his survival. Simultaneously hunt down as many players as possible to gain experience and contribution points. And contribution points can be used for mutual trade, exchange of advanced skills and weapons. They can also be used to improve their position and status. And now that everything was clear to Luli, he was going to start this event. But before he could do that, the aggrieved loser, our king or whoever who can't handle himself, came face to face with them, because he couldn't believe that Wu Wei dared to openly attack him, Lord of the North Hall. He, like an offended woman, asks if she is declaring war on the Northern Hall, but seeing that she does not answer his questions, he threatens her that he will report this incident to the city lord. However, she scored a bolt on this devil in Kamchatka, and suddenly instead he started insulting her, calling her an ambitious bitch, and she must be plotting to get rid of him, that's all. And also, she apparently wants to take military resources into her own hands and decided to stage a riot. Having said that, she realized that silence could do more damage to her reputation than frankness, so she decided to meet him face to face and challenge him for interrupting the tournament. After all, by the way, yes, this person interrupted the tournament because he wanted to save his case. But this is a violation of the rules, so he should be punished, not her. And there's no way a demon like him would be so kind-hearted as to save someone's life. So she suspects that he must have already promised the champion title to the old man and the 7 blood claws. And this may even be the real truth. And he also dares that she decides to make some kind of rebellion. Mutiny on the ship, okay. While it is he who always intervenes and plays on both sides like an annoying little man. And the next time he says one more word, she promises that the next time he goes to battle, she will cut his military salary. Then, she will stop supplying him with military provisions, and she will not even supply him with equipment. But he had no choice but to yell at her, in a fit of anger, because he knew perfectly well that he would have big problems if she really did this. Well, stop deliveries and all that. Meanwhile, the 3 low-level monsters decided to run the hell out of here, because they know all too well that if these two start fighting, it will be the 3 of them who will die first, as well as half of the residents of the city will suffer. So before that happens, Luli asks to take with him to participate in the next event, open a portal in front of him. But even before he could enter it, Wu Yu warns him not to embarrass her. So if he can't kill 1,000 people, he shouldn't assert himself by returning to her. Moments later, when he descends into the player's world, his guide to random achievements is triggered. Seeing that he has already exceeded the 10th level, it generates a random mission for him, and it is this mission that Wu Yu ordered him to complete, demanding that he kill 1,000 players. Fortunately for him, he doesn't need to search for players, as the system has announced his arrival to all players. Although this prompts them to kill him on the spot. He even appeared in front of the players, looking like fodder for cattle that have no clothes on. And what can it lead to? This means only one thing: take care of your Joe in your life. But before he could start, another of his shield items discovered that his level had increased, so he automatically switched to it, which gave him another attribute boost. And since his quality improves every 10 levels, he will receive a randomly assigned exclusive class skill, and he will have a chance to refresh and get a new skill for the next level up. And while there was a random distribution of skills, for bald guys started attacking from all sides, nevertheless, he dodges their every attack. And soon after, the system finally decided what to give him. He has a skill called the Hunting Blade of the Whip, which allows him to quickly strike the first blow at the target, starting with 110% and ending with 150% damage on the last blow. If the target is killed with this skill, Then the oblique strikes will be saved, and will automatically be aimed at a random enemy within a radius of 10 meters to continue the attack. And he also has a powerful passive ability, which means that for every enemy killed by this skill, you can get an additional 150% physical damage. And because Loli was smart, he knew exactly how to use this skill to the fullest, so he cut through his opponent's triggers, dealing them significant damage, because he knows that if he lowers the health level of a large number of enemies, and then activates his acquired skill, then his hunting skill will double. And theoretically, he just unlocked the automatic hunt. After killing 4 players, he summoned his fairy to ask if other players could see his location, to which she replied that yes, they could, since the system continues to broadcast his location to all players in real time. Thanks to this, he felt the black energy enveloping his body, and he knows that everything has become much easier for him. And as soon as the players appeared, he gave vent to his anger, and began to cut them left and right. And soon after, only their weapons were left of the players. And now, the killer was sitting on a tree branch, thinking about moving to a new place, since the number and purity of collecting players decreases, and he also cannot take equipment from players. So there's another problem here. There's no point in staying here any longer. But before he could leave, another ambitious bastard appeared, and he even had the audacity to replace himself with the main character of this story, and he planned to take all the weapons for himself. And so Luli decided to send this bastard to the place where he belongs. So Luli just cuts his throat, and just like it was shown earlier, the number of players he killed has increased to 444. But it still wasn't enough, so he decided to look for more players instead of waiting for them. But before he could do it, communication with an ambitious and a player gave him an idea. So he sent a fairy the coordinates of his current location, and told him to go alone. And Afe assumed that his brother was going to cure him, or even give him some items that would help him in his adventures. So he goes to the scene as fast as he can. But he did not expect to see several hundred swords on the ground, which plunged him into shock and disbelief. And somewhere in another part of the forest, lightning struck directly into the ground. And all this happened because one player single-handedly beat an epic boss, and this player is none other than the Moon, a Knight of Moonlight with the title of Dazzling New, which can only be achieved by entering the top 100 in the region. And now she has become much stronger, as she has just received an epic level bracelet. It is called the Heart of Resilience, which will sell her an additional boost in development. In addition, he has a special ability that triggers with a 20% probability if the user experiences control attacks, which increases his resistance by 20 points. And while she just stood there menacingly, Loli was sitting on top of a tree branch again, marveling at this player's skill, as this was the first time he had seen a player capable of fighting an epic level boss alone. Intrigued by this, he asks the fairy to look for information about the Moonlight Knight class. She showed him that Moonlight Knight. This is a hidden threat among swordsmen, possessing the attributes of balance. And this whole Moonlight Knight's attack has both physical and magical properties. Summing up, we can say that it has low entry requirements and a high potential to reach the maximum level. Meanwhile, Luna noticed that she was being watched and wondered who it was. But her train of thought was disrupted by a humpback, Humpty Dumpty bastard who tried to trick the Moon into taking epic items from her hand to put in his pockets. However, Luna isn't stupid either, so instead of wasting their time trying to trick her, she instead offered to fight. However, this jerk still has the nerve to try to break through the nonsense. He even told Ek from Derek's phone number, but she didn't want to listen to him. So she told them to take her loot for themselves if they could. And the ringleaders did not hesitate to act. But once they were within reach, they soon discovered that it was a villain chain that was not worth messing with. She cut them up like grass, while making them beautiful in shoo-shoo-shoo. And it was as if thousands of stars like me were falling under the night sky. I'm joking, not me, but you, my dear and beloved subscribers. Shoo-shoo. And only now, this egghead realized that he had messed with this madama in vain. And yet, he tries to intimidate Luna by using his guild's name to get out of this situation. So if she kills him now, and her guild mates are definitely going to hunt her down. However, Luna just doesn't care about it, so she just cuts his ugly face into pieces. And now that everything was settled, she asked the person who was looking at her from above to come down and look right in the face. And the bazaar is a question. We go down, and taking a closer look at him, Luna was caught off guard, as she didn't expect the peeping bastard to be a boss-level monster, while Luli was amazed that she noticed him. Because of this, both of them did not dare to meet face to face, as they knew that fighting with each other would cost them dearly, and it would be quite difficult, so it's definitely not worth it. And surprisingly, while they were thinking about what their next move would be, a lot of players suddenly appeared out of nowhere, surrounding both of them, and it looks like they were divided into two groups. One side targeted Luna, due to her chopping off the head and egghead, while the other was a raiding party intent on defeating Luli. And they had no other choice, they knew exactly what to do next, so they simultaneously rushed at each other, but at the last moment, they split up and disappeared behind the group that was not targeting them. And because of that, the group just ignored them, so the two of them managed to escape. But soon after, both sides realized what had happened and decided to pursue their goals at the same time. But what happens when a crowd runs into another crowd? It happens. Boom. However, there's no way they're going to budge for anyone. So these two groups are trying to make their way through the crowd, but to their surprise, from the very beginning this was the plan of these two. When Luna or Lu came back, they gave them a deuce and started raping them from all sides. After seeing such a sight, the players panicked, and even though there were their allies in this crowd, they still shot at them, but because there was no other way. But this only made the situation worse, because it caused a domino effect, as a result of which they fought with each other, they with their goals. However, those who were at the highest level survived, and they hoped that they managed to kill their targets, but to their horror, it was not at all what they had hoped for. And Luli activated his hunting advantage, killing them all non-stop, like a perpetual motion killing machine. Thanks to this number of players he beat, the number reached 999. And coincidentally, Luna was still alive, and looking for another player. And it may take some time, so it looks like a fight with her will be inevitable. So without hesitation, the two of them pounced on each other to end it. And that's how the system congratulated Luli on completing the task for random achievements. A few moments later, somewhere in the real world, a white-haired girl in a wheelchair enjoys the view of the sea. And this girl is none other than the moon. And it turns out that our Luli was killed by an invalid, but I condemn it. And it looks like she's from a rich family. And her virtual reality helmet looks insanely cool, and her real name is Seo. And 7 by. And the maid informs her that her parents are calling her for dinner. However, she has no plans to join them now, as she has just met an interesting boss. So instead, she sent her room to write an essay on how to beat this battery-powered boss Knuckle. Meanwhile, when Luli was passing through the portal, a random achievement notification determined that he had completed his mission to kill 1,000 players, and therefore he was receiving a reward. And now he has a mythical item, enchanted divine earrings, which allows the owner to evolve his own race. And after evolution, the owner will acquire a race-specific appearance and a race-specific passive talent and master its language. Thanks to this, he received a worthy reward for his efforts, since this item has both excellent applicability and functionality. And then there was a system interface that congratulates on the completion of the events in the storm cloud. And thanks to his amazing performance, the system decided to reward him with 1 contribution point and a crazy amount of experience points, raising his level to 21. And with that, he acquired another skill, the Ripping Explosive Blade, which allows him to strengthen his next basic attack, dealing 180% of the target's physical damage, while ignoring 20% of the target's physical defense. In addition, there is a 20% chance that the target will bleed. Soon after, He walked out of the portal, where he was greeted by loud cheers, countless crowds of people who saw what he had just done. Even the commentators were impressed to see that he set a new record for killing thousands of players. It is quite obvious that he will really deserve the title of the rising star of the storm cloud. But this amazing achievement also aroused the hatred of others, to which Luli drew attention, since this bastard in Kamchatka could not look him in the eye. And it's not that they didn't have it, there was just banal envy. And yet, he couldn't take care of him anymore. Next, Luli turned his attention to Wu Yu, who recognized his reliability, since he didn't embarrass her, which delighted her and led to a sincere smile. And now, when she saw that he was worthy of her time, she waved her hands and suddenly opened the portal and told Luli to follow her, which he willingly did. And now they had entered one of the secret realms, the evolutionary blood pool of Blood Moon City, which confused Luli when he looked at it, because in the game he was developing, nothing was said about it. And he wondered what was really going on. But his train of thought was interrupted by the fact that View asked him if he had any idea about the reason for this. After all, even though the blood level was brought to the same level as his, he was able to easily defeat others. To which Loli confidently replied, explaining that he knew the reason, and it was related to his bloodline. Just like the equipment has different qualities, the attributes of each monster vary greatly from different bloodlines, and its bloodline is the lowest. And seeing that they are talking about bloodlines, Loli asks if this place where they are now is related to overcoming the attributes of the bloodline. To which she replied that this is exactly what he thinks, and this is one of the secret realms that is under her control. And since she recognizes his value, he can now choose any area he would like to dive into. But before that, she reminds him not to get too hopeful, as his development still depends on his luck. Meanwhile, in the northern hall of the city of the Blood Moon, a Kamchatka peasant falls into hysterics, thinking about how the Yu showed disrespect to him in front of a crowd of people, so he was just furious. And yet, this wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for this useless brat from the Lion clan, which further inflames his anger. And seeing that the situation may get out of control, one of his advisors, who was next to him, tries to calm him down, and tells him that he shouldn't be so angry, because it might not be so bad. After all, the Lion clan had always sought to maintain a good relationship with him, thanks to this incident, which they saw that he was willing to suffer to protect their offspring. They would always be on his side. Therefore, he came to the conclusion that this would undoubtedly strengthen their loyalty towards him. But even after all this, Joan confessed to his advisor that he could not suppress his anger, and it really gets on his nerves. In response, the advisor suggested a more indirect way to provoke Wu Yu, and although they could not directly harm her, there were alternative methods. He leaned over to the redneck and quietly whispered his plan to him. Hearing all this, an evil grin spread across Joan's face, so he decided to proceed with the implementation of the advisor's plan. And a few moments later, Luli has already plunged into a pool of blood, and is now in the process of evolution. While in Yu, watching his progress, which she can't help but be fascinated by. The absorption rate is quite high. It can only mean one thing, that the potential of Luli is quite high. However, her train of thought was interrupted by someone calling her name, and so she turns around and sees the Black Death guards of the City Lord's mansion, who asks her to go with them, since the City Lord had given them orders to summon her to the main city immediately. And yet she wasn't going to just agree to go with them, to the fact that she is very busy right now, so she asks them to wait until she is free. However, they are not her subordinates, and therefore do not plan to obey her as they want to. And so, the captain decides on the amount of blood of the City Lord and his decree, and after issuing the amount of blood and the decree, the recipient must immediately appear to the City Lord, and those who disobey will be executed without mercy. And given that, she has no choice but to go with them. But before she leaves Luli behind, she sends him a mysterious message, informing him that there are rockfalls in the mountain nearby from time to time, so he should watch out for this, so as not to be accidentally crushed. After that, she leaves with the guards. At these words, the captain could not help but smile, as everything is going according to their plan. And after a few moments, Wu Yu and the guards completely left Luli alone. However, it turned out that the progress of his evolution was close to completion, as the amount of blood around him was increasing, and now enveloped his entire body. And soon after, he was nowhere to be seen, as the blood completely covered him. But this is exactly the moment the others were waiting for, since it is at this time that Luli cannot cancel his evolutionary process, and becomes vulnerable to attacks. And so, the junior commander of the Shadow Squad gave the signal to his subordinates to attack, which they did. However, they had no idea that the absorption of Luli happened faster than they expected. He had awakened, and was more than willing to explain to these fools what the difference in skills was. And at the same time, her and the guards are now climbing the mountain, and the captain smiles happily, seeing that such a powerful being as Yu can do nothing but be obedient when he sees the order to summon blood. But to his surprise, View suddenly decided to stop following them and just sat down on a rock. The captain asked her what the point of this sudden rest was. However, she does not feel the need to explain herself to them, as she simply enjoys the view of her pool of blood, where several curious insects chase each other to kill Luli. And now the fastest of them managed to cut the place where Luli was resting. Thus, the spherical blood formation had disintegrated, and now they were just standing there, waiting for the remains of their target. But to their surprise, Luli was still unharmed. This is confusing to kill, as they obviously thought they had killed Luli, and even the one who did it felt that his attack was connected to something else. However, seeing that their target was on his feet, they did not hesitate to make sure that this bastard died. But, as soon as they took a closer look at their target, their eyes filled with shock when they realized that Luli had completed his evolution and came out stunningly hot. And now they are wondering about their sexual orientation. But before they could react, Luli simply beheaded them, and the junior commander was shocked to see that he had already completed his evolution. But still, they had to finish the job, and so he ordered his subordinates to attack together, which of course they did. And thanks to their joint work, they launched a coordinated attack. But Luli simply took a step back to get back from them, because those little glasses were still damn long. And what's even more amazing is that he made holes in their hearts, which they didn't even notice. After all, now Luli is on a completely different level. They didn't even realize they were dead until they saw their heart in Luli's hands, which completely shocked them all. But the junior commander cannot allow this. He cannot allow such disrespect to pass him by. And so he attacks Luli with everything he has. And with each blow, he surrounds his blade with a powerful aura that multiplies his strength. However, right now Luli has the time of demons, so he easily evades them all. Luli turned out to be a real threat, as he doesn't even take this fight seriously. He even smiles slyly, looking at him with his bright gaze. After that, the junior commander realized that he was screwed, and now he knows why he was appointed junior commander. He was destined to become a junior commander from the very beginning, and therefore he easily takes damage, as well as rent out his left arm, leaving him with no choice but to step back and reflect on his life choices. He wondered where it all went wrong. All the information provided to him about Luli led him astray, as he realized that Luli was not so weak. But even if he realized that, he couldn't just get out of here. He has to kill Luli, since this mission was entrusted to him by Joan, and he does not want to mention his teacher's name. And so he called in other hidden killers to help him. They had to fulfill their mission, to put everything they had on the line. Therefore, they performed a ritual to raise the junior commander's level by giving him a huge power that improved his overall abilities. Because of this, he even regenerated a limb and now wanted to beat Luli, while Li Luli's face remained calm, as the junior commander was still weak in his eyes. But to prove his strength, he willingly rushes towards the enemy, and as soon as he got close, he returned to his skeleton form, which made the commander think that Luli's evolution had failed, which in turn gave him confidence in winning this duel. He kept throwing punches, but to his surprise, Loli easily dodged them. And when his enemy gained momentum, Loli took this chance to return to his demonic form and behead the commander. At the same time, the shock could be seen on the junior commander's face when he saw his own body without a head. Meanwhile, on the sidelines, Wu was applauding Luli's performance, rejoicing that his evolution and his murders were successful. Then Luli asks if these killers were from a guy in Kamchatka. To which she said that even the guards who told her these with them were connected to Joan, but she had already sent them away. After receiving this information, Luli realized that she had known about their motives from the very beginning, and so he asked her if this was his second test. However, when he suddenly approached her, the picture became clearer. She noticed that he was pretty well equipped down there, and so she looked at him more than necessary, which of course confused Luli, forcing him to cover his cock-sill with his hands. But to his surprise, she felt very thirsty, and ordered him to remove his hands right now. And when it was over, she told him that she was quite satisfied with his performance, and therefore she asked him what he wanted, since she could fulfill his one wish. But our man was not excited, so he only wants to know one thing. He wants to know where his brother is. So he asked Wu Woyu about Han Zhao's whereabouts, which made her sigh, and she told him the bad news that he had already left. Well, here we are again, and we finish at an interesting moment, but because the chapters are over, now we are waiting for a new chapter to release a new continuation of the retelling. Don't be stingy with likes and comments, and also say thank you to my wife for translating the 11th chapter for you, and it was only thanks to her that I made this retelling. Wait for even more new and cool retellings, as well as the continuation of those TEDs that have already been. And remember, my name is also Clint, and you can buy games at the lowest prices in my Clint Pay store. See you again and bye-bye.